Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Modley, before I get into my broader strategic and parochial questions, I just wanted to note that several members of the Florida delegation wrote you regarding the awarding of Purple Hearts to those wounded during the December terrorist attack on Pensacola NAS, and asking you to review whether any of those personnel merit Valor Awards. As a combat veteran, I certainly saw valor in the actions of many to protect their fellow sailors and civilians. So I understand the Valor Awards are still under review, but I wanted to thank you for awarding several Purple Hearts to the victims of that horrific attack. I just want to echo quickly my colleagues, Representative Gallego, Representative Banks, the concerns of the burgeoning qualitative and quantitative Chinese and Russian fleets. Lots of discussion of the Virginia, lots of discussion of the Columbia. Obviously, that's a key part of our deterrent. Moscow and Beijing, I think, feel the same way. So taking a look at the P-8s and just following up on Representative Banks, we have a reserve squadron. The P-3s are so old that I guess we're retiring those even without replacements. Well, what's the bottom line and where you need to go on the total numbers of P-8s and how and when are we going to get there? And I know that is a piece of the ASW fight, but I think it's a pretty critical one.
Sir, we're not abandoning P-3s without a replacement. So P-8s are coming online and replacing those P-3s. In the late 20s, that inventory will be closed, fully closed.
Admiral, my understanding is that the reserve squadron in Jacksonville, Florida, is going to decommission before they get P-8s. If we could, I would be happy to be wrong on that. If you could just follow up for the record.
I will come back to you on that, sir. But I also take a look at whether or not that's being replaced in a different area with a different squadron. But I'll get back to it.
Thank you. And then on the sonobuoy piece, and again, you could take this for the record as well if you don't have the detail. As we looked at it, you request $49 million to recapitalize the newest version, the SSQ 125A. My understanding, that's not in production yet. So we're confused on basically if you could come back to us and explain why we're recapping a sonobuoy that's not in production versus replenishing the stocks and continuing to replenish the stocks, which I think this committee has supported you in doing in the last few years. But that seems to us to be a disconnect for replenishing something that's not in production yet. If you could come back to us on that, I'd appreciate it, Admiral. And then, I just have a broader strategic top-line question that I'm asking of all of the services. I mean, and the Secretary and Chairman. We're looking at a flat top-line budget. We're looking at increasing personnel costs. How? I still am not clear, and I think this is the broader strategic question we're all asking. How are we going to modernize? How are we going to recap? And how are we going to procure when our personnel costs continue in the out year and the fight up to eat up more and more of a flat top line? I'm having trouble kind of circling that square. If you could speak to that, and then in the time remaining, I completely agree. There's a quality and quantity. Are you looking at any types of pulling anything out of mothball or modernizing any from the hazard frigates or anything along those lines of kind of really getting out of the box to keep up with the pace that the Chinese are cranking out ships?
So I think, sir, the best way to answer that first question from my perspective is we have to look internally at our own organization. And there are many things that we do, the way we operate, the way our business processes are set up, the business system structures that we have, that inhibit our organization to be as agile as it needs to be. And there's cost associated with that. There are overhead structures that are associated with that we don't need to have. And we need to funnel that into modernization. I think ultimately we can dig very deep to find some of that, but at some point there's going to have to be a broader discussion about a higher top line for the Navy. And that's something that I'm trying to queue up, but I can't.
Just in the time. Thank you for that candor. And the other piece, again, I'm on the Future Defense Task Force as well in my remaining 10 seconds. If we're moving long-term to more and more lightly manned and unmanned systems, but we have the long-term personnel costs that are eating up that budget, how, if you could come back for the record of how, where those intersections come. Is it 5 years, 10 years, and how do we accelerate it?
Happy to do so.
Thank you.